Who are you? I'm you, but even more pointless.
Hey guys, what's going on? NCS Master here again, back with a little bit of a different type of video here. So I actually do have another big video that I'm meaning to work on going through the pipeline at the moment. It's trying to come along, but unfortunately, to make a long story short, adult life is a bitch. Yeah, with my current job, I don't always have a lot of time to fully sit down and edit and create the fully edited videos that I make, but they are a lot of fun. But I decided to go ahead and try to make a different little type of video here in the meantime, just on a topic that I think a lot of people certainly have thoughts about given what's going on. So yeah, this is just shooting straight from the hip, no script here, no notes, just me talking to the mic and just shooting the shit on whatever I want to talk about. And what I want to talk about today is certainly something that won't come without controversy, that's for damn sure. So most of you around in the gamer sphere right now are probably aware of how much remakes are just kind of a big hot ticket item right now. The past year and change or so, we have seen an absolute metric fuck ton of remakes across the board in the industry. Like just this past year, we've seen the likes of Resident Evil 4, Star Ocean Second Story, Mario RPG, all very, very good games, by the way, would highly recommend. And it's honestly just looking to continue even further into next year. In fact, next year might even be more loaded when it comes to the amount of remakes that there are. Like we've got the Mario vs. Donkey Kong remake, the another Code duology remake, FF7 Rebirth, Persona 3 Reload. There's Luigi's Mansion Dark Moon HD, if you want to count that as part of it. And I know there's more, but that just goes to show how many there are. But yeah, there is no shortage of like big time remakes and remasters that we're getting down the pipeline here. And just over the past day or so, we found out that another game is going to be added to that list going into next year, but it's not exactly one that's going to leave a lot of people happy. Or it might leave some people happy, but a lot of other people, like myself, it's just more scratching our heads like, why is this even a thing? So for anybody who's been living under a rock, just about yesterday at the time I'm recording this video, Sony dropped the big news that they are actually going to be doing a remastered version of The Last of Us Part 2. And that certainly got a lot of different reactions out of people. This comes like very out of the blue. Like there was not much forewarning of this game, although we did hear slight rumblings of it from like news reports and the like, but a lot of people kind of just blew it off for the most part. There was like some talk about it after the first game got remade, and I'll go into that in a second. But yeah, this was kind of thrown around, but also not really. But then Sony just ended up making it an official thing. It leaked ahead of time because of course it did. It seems like everything with The Last of Us leaks nowadays. In fact, most stuff with games in general seems to leak nowadays. But yeah, the game leaked, and then just a couple of hours or so after the news broke out through that leak, Sony just officially went ahead and announced it themselves on their social media platforms like Twitter and their blog and the like. And yeah, to say reactions of this have been divisive would be putting it very, very lightly. This is kind of just a big culmination of somewhat of a shitstorm that's just been surrounding the Last of Us IP for like the past year and change or so. And this just feels like the cherry on top of people just like feeling really, really tired with this series. So a lot of people first found out of it here through like Wario64 tweeting about it, because this man is how the majority of us that are stuck on this hell site still get our gaming news here. So there was like this big post detailing a bunch of stuff that's going to be coming with this remaster here. And yep, they got official art, some like details and like official screenshots and all that. But yeah, so this is happening, and it's going to be happening relatively soon. It's actually slated for January of just next year. So it's only a couple months out as is. So there's not going to be a lot of time for build up with this game. But I mean, it's just a remaster, so I wouldn't really be like that. That's not really out of the blue. But also, it just kind of seemed to have come out of nowhere. And in turn, a lot of reactions to this have come pretty quickly, and it's been a wide variety to say the least. Like, you've got the Sony diehards who are, like, very, very excited for this game, obviously, and, like, much like stuff I said about The Last of Us 1 remake, like, if you're excited for this game and you wanna buy it, like, go right ahead. I'm not one to say, you know, "Oh, you shouldn't spend your money on this," or, "Oh, you're supporting, like, bad business," or something like that if you buy this remaster. No, it's like, it's your money, do whatever the hell you want with it. As far as I'm concerned, you can buy whatever you would like with your money, and as long as it's not something that's, like, killing or hurting people, you know, like, it's your finances, like, do what you want. But I also feel like there is just this sentiment of, like, with this announcement, there's a lot of people, including myself, who just get the feeling of that guy from BlizzCon who just said, like, is this an out of season April Fool's joke? Because we look at this existing here, this remaster of The Last of Us 2, this being a real thing that's gonna happen, that we're gonna have to pay money for, and we're just questioning, like, why does this even exist? Like, what is the point of this happening here? Because The Last of Us Part 2, like, The Last of Us Part 2 is already a game that, like, exists shrouded in controversy. Like, I don't think it's much of a stretch to say that The Last of Us 2 is one of the most controversial video games of all time. Even 3.5 years out from its release, if you give any opinion of this game on the internet, whether it be on, like, Twitter, YouTube, or, like, Reddit or something, I don't know, you will get, like, visceral reactions from it. Whether it be you're supporting it, you're negative about it, it gets some of the most intense reactions out of people. Like, one of the only other games I can think of in recent times that hits the same level is, like, Pokemon Sword and Shield, which even then is for, like, very, very different reasons. And so, like, a remaster of this was already going to come with a lot of heavy implications with stuff like that, but also just the timing of this remaster feels so unnecessary and just completely pointless. Like I said a minute ago, this game is only 3.5 years old, and it's going to be 3.5 years old when the remaster drops, because again, it's just in a couple of months. This game came out in 2020, I believe in June of 2020, if I'm not mistaken. So this game is still very, very fresh in people's minds. I'm sure many people have already done multiple playthroughs of the original by this point. And so a remaster of it just feels like, why is this being done? Like, what is there much to accomplish with this? Now, I do want to give PlayStation and Naughty Dog at least a drop of credit here, because they were smart enough to add an option here for this remaster where you just pay $10 and you just get an upgrade for it. Like, if you already own the original game from 3 years ago, you just pay the $10 and you get the remaster for that. So I will give it to them that is at least a solid way to do something like this, because if they charge, like, let's be upfront here. If they just released this as, like, a new physical game and charged a full $70 for it, no, someone's head would have to roll. That would be utterly, utterly egregious and one of the most blatant cash grabs in the history of video games. So, like, that is at least something, but even then, if the way it's being sold to you, even if that's okay, that still doesn't really take away from the fact that the product still just feels utterly unnecessary here. Because, like, the thing about The Last of Us 2 Remastered is, like, people were making jokes about this when the remake of The Last of Us 1 happened just last year. Like, people were poking fun at the idea of this being a thing. And they were doing that because the remake of The Last of Us 1, that already felt pointless to a lot of people. Like, people felt the original game getting this big high-budget remake and, like, this big upscaling for PlayStation 5, they felt that was unnecessary. Because, like that game wasn't even 10 years old, and it was still getting, like, this high-budget, high-profile remake that many people just didn't feel was even necessary because the game was already remastered before. It wasn't even 10 years old, and it's like, what was there to even be done there? And I feel like that's just the big problem that a lot of people are having with The Last of Us 2 Remastered, and by extension, the remake of the first game, is that it just feels like there is no reason for these to exist other than just to make a quick buck and to try and push The Last of Us IP super duper hard. Because Sony has been really shoving The Last of Us as an IP down people's throats the past few years. We got the second game a few years ago, we got the remake last year, we got the TV show, I believe that was early this year. And then they're trying to work on a factions expansion or like a factions standalone game, although that game is apparently in like the fucking doldrums in terms of how development is going, to the point where I wouldn't be shocked if that gets straight up canceled. And now you have a remaster of that game that, again, is not even 4 years old at this point. And it sounds like there could be some okay things here in this remaster. Like, there's like a new mode that they're adding that's like a roguelike mode, which, like, that sounds kind of cool. But at the same time, does it really feel like we need to go through all this effort to like make a full-on remaster of this game for the newer, more shiny system just to add in all these extra little features? Because, like, people were saying that with The Last of Us 1 remake, that like there felt like there wasn't much of a point to it because The Last of Us 1 in many ways still held up, at least from like a technical standpoint and how it looked. Like The Last of Us 1 originally, it's still a very good looking game to this day, especially like the PS4 remaster, that still looks really, really good. And then you got the remake, which, like, yeah, it looks technically better, but at that point, you reach a level of diminishing returns here where you're shining something up, but there's so little technical room to make it even better by that point that you're kind of just expending a lot of resources for something that doesn't even make all that much of a difference in the grand scheme of things. And that seems to be happening even on a worse level here for The Last of Us 2 Remastered. Like, you've got this post here by Pio, and like, he's a cool dude, I really like him, but he kind of made a post here that like massively exposed the big issue here with The Last of Us 2 Remastered. Like, he put these two shots of Ellie here side by side from the PS4 and the PS5, and like, what is the difference here? Like, there is no difference other than slightly different with the lighting. Like, honestly, like, this one here on the bottom is the remaster version, but like, you could tell me the top one is the remaster and the bottom one is the original, and I would believe you, because there's nothing different about this. It's like, you look at this and you look at how there's so little that is changing or improving, and you just don't understand the point of it. And I mean like, no point from an artistic standpoint, because you know, obviously the point is her popular IP, money go brr. Like, this post, like, not grilling him, but like grilling like the state of this remaster here, is just getting a ton of like quotes that are just ripping into it, because there's no visual or artistic reason for something like this. Like, if you pay $70 for this and own the original, I'm making fun of you forever. This is something you get as a free update on your PC. People just saying it's funny. A lot of people mentioning Bloodborne here because, you know, a lot of people have been wanting a remaster of Bloodborne. Not YouTube kids. Toothpick changes everything. That's been like a big thing. Like, freaking Ponzi scheme, just saying like how dumb it is, like trying to notice any difference here. And it's the Alex Jones pick, because it's true. There's so little that's different here. What is even the reason that you would go through with doing this? You're not adding anything. You're not pushing anything further. So, like, calling this a remaster, it's ridiculous, because there's nothing being remastered. It's the same thing. And I think a lot of frustrations also just come from people wanting other IPs to get this type of attention. Like, why is The Last of Us 2 getting this development time, these resources, this money all being poured into it for very little to no actual noticeable differences in returns, when PlayStation has this like overwhelming vault of IPs that they don't use and can just end up making much better use out of with something like a remaster or a remake, but they just let rot on the shelf because it doesn't fit like their current model of big movie games with high budgets and dramatic cutscenes and stuff like that. Like there is a reason I'm gonna be using Jak and Daxter footage for the fill-in footage for this video, because yes, I am extremely bitter about all of this. I have made that very apparent here on Twitter with multiple posts, and apparently a fair few people agree with me. Good God. But yeah, it's like you just look at PlayStation and you have all these intellectual properties and all these franchises that they just don't use, that people really still like, and they just let die instead of giving them a chance with like new and modern audiences that could really flesh out their catalog and add some honestly really needed variety to their lineups, because it's like seems to be a growing sentiment with PlayStation among a number of gamers that they make great games, but they have a very stark variety problem in the terms of high budget, like super big games that are made for them, like by PlayStation Studios specifically. Like, don't get me wrong, stuff like God of War, Spider-Man, Ghost of Tsushima, those are phenomenal video games, but like the overwhelming bulk to come out of PlayStation's main studios all have such this similar style, and there's not much in terms of branching out or giving a lot of diversity to the big games they release. Like, I think a lot of people would welcome a return for something like Jak and Daxter or Sly Cooper, or bringing back more weird stuff like Ape Escape or like Loco Roco. And I mean, shit, it's blatantly obvious that they want a high-profile JRPG that they can market and show off as being theirs on their system. That's why they throw all this money at like Square Enix to get Final Fantasy stuff exclusive to them. And also why they tried to hold Persona down under their thumb for all those years, although it's looking like that dam finally might be breaking there with all the news out of Atlas saying they want like millions of sales for Persona for their next title, which, yeah, that's going to be multi-plat day one if they're looking at those types of numbers. But like, if PlayStation wants that, they have Legend of Dragoon, they have Wild Arms, and you could reintroduce those with a remaster or a big remake. Like, if you give those the time of day, people will look into those, and a lot of them probably will buy into them because PlayStation has a lot of very, very devoted fans who will keep up with the majority of stuff that they put out. But instead, we're getting just The Last of Us again, after we've been getting it over and over and over, and after it's already been essentially the game that's been the basis for what all of PlayStation's main formula is now, and has been for a decade. And it all just kind of also seems to be weighing on The Last of Us as a franchise as well. Like, this isn't an IP that's majority hated by any means, but I think most would be hard-pressed to disagree that The Last of Us as a franchise, as its name is kind of getting more and more sour with a lot of people. Like, when the first game came out, it was massively lauded as like this game changer for video games. But now with stuff like the remake and these remasters and the divisiveness of 2 and like the failed stuff with factions, more and more people are just kind of getting like tired of this franchise constantly being pushed now. Sony really trying to make it this massive thing. The franchise's own attitude about itself being a series that's really up its own ass about being all like high art, and people getting really sick of that attitude. And stuff like this remaster, it's not gonna help those pre-existing feelings, and if anything, it's just gonna make them even worse. And Naughty Dog's wider reputation as a whole really seems to be taking a hit off of stuff like this too. Like, people are making a lot of jokes right now about how The Last of Us is like the only thing they do now, and how they just wish they would make something new. And to be honest, I'm right there with them. I've never been a big fan of The Last of Us, and I would be much more interested in seeing them do something a lot more new and unique and original, or at least something that would like stick out from the crowd instead of just The Last of Us over and over again. Like, this series literally now has more remakes and remasters than it does original games. And it's like, the jokes write themselves. I mean, do I even need to say anything? Ultimately, though, like, if you do want to buy this remaster, like, go right ahead, buy what you like, and go ahead and love it. I will never tell you otherwise that you're wrong or that you shouldn't be buying it. But just for me and a lot of other people, we're just sitting back, just like rubbing our temples. Like, what is the point of this? Why does this even exist? And why does this have to exist over stuff that could benefit from it way more and get a lot more use out of supporting new IPs? I I don't know how good this remaster is going to do. It's probably going to do decent, especially because of like the $10 upgrade pass. So a lot of more people are going to get into it that way instead of having to pay like a full another $70 like you had to do with The Last of Us Remake. Because I feel like even they knew they couldn't get away with reselling this game again at a bumped up price point when the original game you could buy for like $20, maybe even 10 sometimes now, and it's not even 4 years old yet. I don't know. I hope after this, Naughty Dog, like, I know they're probably going to do The Last of Us 3, but I hope at least some part of their team goes on to make something new, unique, and just more interesting, just because I'm tired of this franchise, and they are very talented developers. Like, they know how to make a good game. It's just they're stuck in this mine where they just can't get out of this one IP. So yeah, in short, I don't get why this exists. A lot of other people don't get why this exists. Some are probably going to buy it. A lot of people are going to make fun of it. And for God's sakes, PlayStation, please use more of your IPs that you're just letting die. You have so many good ones. Stop wasting them. It's... God, I would give anything for a fucking remake of Legend of Dragoon with, like, this level of detail that they... Yeah, one can only hope. But that'll do it for now, guys. I'll try and figure out if I want to do more videos like this in the future. They might be a little bit easier to make, what with the job eating up so much of my time. But until then, thanks so much for watching if you're still here, and I'll see y'all in the next video, whenever that ends up getting made.